Nightcast. Stephen Lloyd Gilbreth brings you the current news from the world today and how it relates to Bible prophecy. Understanding the end-time events leading to the peaceful world tomorrow. Ladies and gentlemen, Stephen Lloyd Gilbreth.
Greetings, friends, and welcome to this April 30, last day of April 2015, for this edition of Nightcast. In the news tonight, friends, the big story about the devastating earthquake in Nepal. There's a little bit of good news tonight in that a teenage boy, and a woman in her 20s have been rescued from the rubble.
A frantic search has just begun. A 7-story guest house collapsed here. And 5 days after the earthquake hit, there's the sound of a survivor. It's a mad scramble to reach him as quickly as possible.
Inside there, they've heard a voice. There's a person who's been communicating. He says he's 15 years old and his name is Pemba. This morning he's asked for water. They've been able to hand him a bottle of water, and now all of these people are trying to cut through that. Someone who's possibly survived there under the rubble.
Rescuers are tunneling through the concrete and using cameras to see where Pemba might be.
Space is about this wide, about this tall. You can see his face.
One of them crawls through and reaches Pemba. And then, the miracle moment. He's out, and he's alive. After more than 120 hours buried in the ruins, Pemba is finally safe.
It's going.
Friends, you're hearing the tears of joy there from the rescue workers as 15-year-old Pemba Lama, a tour guide who was pulled from all that wreckage there. He told aid workers he had survived by eating butter, and the fellow who pulled, the rescue worker who pulled him out, is being cheered by the others. He told the rescue workers he survived by eating butter and could hear the screams of others. Yogita Lemay was our reporter there from Kathmandu on this first rescue. And then there's more. There's a lot of stories in the news tonight, friends, related to things that on our chart would be considered under the fourth seal of Revelation, being that fourth seal was described by Jesus Christ in 3 different ways. The main way he described it was loimus, meaning disease epidemics, pestilence, the plagues of Egypt. But Christ also said in Matthew 24, Mark 13, Luke 21, he said that between the third seal and the fifth seal there would be seismus. And when we see a lot of increased seismus and terrace, when we see all of these things increased, then he said compared to the branches on a tree when they become tender and the little buds start to spring forth, summer is nigh. He said likewise, when you see these things increase, these seals, the activities of these 4 seals from Revelation increase, know that the kingdom of God is near. But there are things that have to happen before Jesus Christ returns. Not like you hear in the old Protestant churches, you better give your heart to the Lord because he might come tonight. Well, before Christ returns, he's told us in prophecy there would be the 5th seal. That's the next major event in prophecy. And the activity of that seal lasts for 2.5 years. And then let me take you to our, let's go back into this, and let me take you over to our chart that's got the full 7 seals in it. You see on the left side, the first 6 seals, they're the four seals that are the colored horses. Then the 5th seal, the Great Tribulation. Then the 6th seal, the heavenly signs, the astro signs, and the sun, the moon, the stars. And then there is a sealing of 144,000. Then there's silence in the heavens for a half hour while God has the angels hold back the first of the 7 trumpets, the first 4 of which are called 4 winds. Those are the first 4 trumpets, and they're terrible, terrible punishments upon man, part of the day of the Lord. And this is God's wrath now. The 5th seal, which many people have mistakenly called, the Great Tribulation is God's wrath. No, the Great Tribulation is still under the days of Satan and man. And this is Satan's wrath, the 5th seal, the Great Tribulation, a time of great martyrdom, a time of World War III, a time of the revival of the old Holy Roman Empire with its 7th and final head being restored in a coronation ceremony which the Pope will conduct, and the Pope, as the false prophet, and this emperor, this dictator, this 7th head of the Holy Roman Empire, as what the Bible calls the beast, will be wreaking havoc on all of the world except for a little area just east of Israel, more or less in Jordan land, on the east side of the waterway that runs between Lake Tiberias and the Dead Sea. And it's called in the Bible, in Daniel 11, verses 40, 41, it's called the land of the children of Ammon. And Ammon is Jordan. Of Ammon, Moab, and Edom. And just below Edom, or in the area of Edom, is a city called Petra, which could be. It's in that triangulated area that God describes in Daniel 11 as being protected, as escaping the overflow, the reach of the beast. And we were saying here, let me check this now that we've gone through that whole chart. Let's put it back up on just these parts of the chart. The 4th seal, Christ said that between the 3rd seal and the 5th seal there would be seismus, and when you see increasing activity of seismus, now that's the Greek word, seismus. You look it up in a Greek-English lexicon, you see that it means seismic activity, seismic conditions, commotions in the air, such as gale force winds of all kinds, tornadoes, typhoons, hurricanes, etc., and commotions on the ground, such as, it gives an example of earthquakes, but commotions on the ground also include volcanic eruptions, include not typhoons, I meant to say tsunamis, wildfires, floodings, and the like. And that's in the news tonight. Beside the news we just saw about the earthquake, there are avalanches and volcanic eruptions going on at the same time. This should be a kind of a red flag to a lot of us who are watching prophecy, and we're told when there are, as the King James puts it, it says when there are earthquakes in diverse places. But the word for earthquakes was, as I just mentioned to you, the word Jesus Christ used was seismus, which means more than earthquakes. Look it up in a good Greek English lexicon. You'll see that seismus is not limited to just the word earthquakes. It also means commotions in the air, gale force winds. It means commotions on the ground, earthquakes, but also including volcanic eruptions, all those things I just mentioned to you, tsunamis, flooding, wildfires, any kind of commotion on the ground, and avalanches would be included in that too. And that relates to our next story. We've got news clips from today's news. There's some new Mount Everest avalanche footage, new amateur footage taken by climbers on Mount Everest.
Go inside.
Let me bring it forward while I tell you about it.
Look. Whoa.
We're taking this was taken the moment an avalanche triggered by the Nepal earthquake headed towards their camp.
Under the table.
Paul Devani and Theodore Johansson were on day 25 of a 55 to 60 day expedition to climb the mountain along with other climbers.
Oh wow.
And they
That's huge.
They ran for cover and hid under tables in their tent.
I've never seen anything come at us like that before. Oh my God.
Okay,
Oh my God.
go, 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 go. Oi, 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 oi. Quick, get down, get down. Under the table. Under the table, come on, come on, come on, come on. Close the door, close the door. Close the door.
Good idea. Close the door, and they crawled under the table.
Wow.
Everyone in the video, we're happy to report, survived.
Oh, wow. Oh, wow. That's huge. Huge.
Okay, friends, and that's just one of several things going on around the world right now in the way of seismic conditions, seismus. Our next story from today's news, lava lake overflows crater of Kilauea volcano in Hawaii. There have been stunning scenes as lava overflows from Kilauea volcano on Hawaii's Big Island. The Summit Lava Lake has overflowed several times since Tuesday, said U.S. geologists, with people gathering at an overlook to watch. Local residents had to be evacuated from their homes in late 2014 when lava burst from a new vent on Kilauea. And here's a look at some of that lava flow. Actually quite spectacular. Some people find it very beautiful. But this, the heat of this lava can get up to 1,000 centigrade. And then while that goes on, we've also got news from today, friends, from Japan. The Japanese volcano Mount Ontake survivor recalls the moment of the eruption of that. A mountain guide who was on Japan's Mount Ontake when it erupted without warning has been speaking about what happened. We'll see if I'm pronouncing that right when this video rolls here in a second. The mountain guide told how she hid from flying rocks and was almost choked by the smell of sulfur. She said she thought she was, you'll hear her say this in this video, she thought she was going to die on the mountain. She spoke to Rupert Wingfield Hayes of the BBC.
Sayori Ogawa is a mountain guide. On Saturday, she was climbing alone, scouting a new route up Japan's second highest volcano. She shows me the point where she was standing, right near the summit, when Mount Ontake suddenly exploded without warning.
It was a beautiful autumn day. Suddenly, I heard a noise. I looked back and saw tons of ashes and rocks in the air. I crouched down. The smell of sulfur was really strong, and I couldn't breathe. Then I saw lots of rock flying. I really thought I was going to die. I thought I was going to be trapped in the gas and die right there at the spot. I thought to myself, why did I come here today?
Completely exposed, Sayori jammed herself into a hole in the rocks. She hid there for an hour as the mountain exploded just meters away.
I hid beneath the rock. Sometimes I could see 30 meters, then suddenly it would go completely black. There were 3 big eruptions. The last one was the biggest. That was when I saw a rock the size of a small car, or others the size of washing machines, flying by. I could hear the noise, swish, swish, of the rocks flying by.
After an hour, the eruptions abated. Sayori took her chance and ran for it, climbing down as fast as she could go. But she knew there were many others still back up there on the mountaintop.
I wonder about those people I saw hanging around on the peak. People who were taking pictures and enjoying the view. It was a really beautiful day. People were having a great time. There was a lot of laughing. People were happy. Now I wonder what happened to them.
Friends, there's an interesting point as that we close out on that right there. People were happy. They were taking pictures, and all of a sudden, surprise, out of nowhere, as if it was. And that should remind some of us what an apostle for these latter days, Mr. Herbert W. Armstrong, used to say to us. He used to remind us that when what's coming with the development of a union in Europe that may be called the United States of Europe, whatever it's called, it's going to be a complete federation of either 10 states or nations or regions, rebordered, redefined, however they do it, but it'll represent 5 from the east and 5 from the west. If we pull out for a moment, if we go up, take the camera shot up here to the top above me, you'll see the full image that King Nebuchadnezzar saw in his dream, the great image, as it's called, from Daniel 2, that caused him to tell his magicians, if you got to interpret my dream for me. And they said, well, fine, just tell us your dream, we'll tell you what it meant. And he said, oh, no, to be sure you're telling me the real meaning of this dream. If you're in touch with the gods, you should tell me both the dream and what it means. Well, that put the magicians of King Nebuchadnezzar in a hard way, because he told them, if you don't tell me the dream and the interpretation, all of you lose your heads. And he was going to kill them all. But the chief butler brought forward Daniel, who was able, through God's revelation, to tell the king, oh, great King Nebuchadnezzar, not me, but the great God in heaven gave me your dream and the interpretation thereof. You saw this great image with a head of gold, and arms and breast of silver, and belly and thighs of brass, and the legs of iron, and the feet of iron mixed with miry common clay, the feet and the 10 toes from the 2 feet. And he said, great King Nebuchadnezzar, you are this head of gold, whom God has given a world-ruling empire. And after you, there will be another. He won't be quite what you were, but he'll be like the silver, which is inferior to the gold as far as quality goes. And yet, as it gets down to the legs, it'll be strong as iron. Not as much quality, but strength-wise, very strong, but divided between 2 legs, east and west. Rome was divided into eastern and western Rome. And the 10 toes on those 2 feet, 5 toes on each feet, represent 5 countries, regions from the east, and 5 on the other foot. The 5 toes on the other foot represent the other area, east and west. And even within the east and even within the west, those toes won't get along with one another, because they're even on one foot. Those toes are part clay and part iron. And as many of you know or should know, iron and clay do not mix, meaning they won't get along with one another. And so that's the point of that. They won't get along, but they will give their power. Those 10 will give their power to a new emperor, a new dictator that they select. Actually, the God of this world selects him. They just think the ones that select him. And the false prophet will crown that beast in a coronation ceremony, most likely to be held in the Kaisersaal, the Emperor's Hall in Frankfurt, Germany, where all the past emperors of the Holy Roman Empire, well, not all of them, but most of them have been crowned in a coronation ceremony in that Kaisersaal, that Emperor's Hall in the Romex building, 2nd floor in Frankfurt, Germany. Bombed out near the end of World War II, but rebuilt thanks to American taxpayers and the Marshall Plan and the IMF and the other things that helped fund all that rebuilding and redevelopment of Germany, making her ready, Germany ready, as the Assyrians, to be able to be used by God to punish his sons, the sons of Jacob, the 12 tribes, who continue to disobey. If they continue to disobey, let's put it in the condition God puts it in. If the people, primarily Joseph's sons, Manasseh in the United States and Ephraim in the United Kingdom. If we continue to disobey our Creator, he says, it's captivity time, it's sword time. 1/3 of you will die by the sword, 1/3 by famine, 1/3 by captivity. But not all of the third in captivity will die. Most of them will. Just a few hairs in the skirt, maybe 10% will be allowed to live on over into the millennium that Christ will reign and rule over after his return. Now, I've given you a picture of what's coming. This is news related to the Bible and prophecy, and we're told when you see these things increase and see this seismic activity in diverse, meaning various places all over the place, all over the world, then you better know all of this could spring together any moment. The EU has three of the conditions that Mr. Herbert Armstrong told us, has two, I should say, I'm sorry, they have two of the three conditions that Mr. Herbert W. Armstrong told us to watch for with Europe coming together. He said the three conditions he told us there would be an economic union. They've got that rolling with the euro, and they've suffered through the problems, and they're swinging through it, even though they got this big problem right now still with Greece. And Greece may Grexit, may do a Greek exit. We don't know how that's going to work out yet, but the euro's hanging in there so far. So they've got economic union in that way. And even if that reshuffles, they'll find economic union in some way. You just watch. It'll be put back together because this is going to happen. God says it's going to happen. Europe will come together. Mr. Armstrong told us three conditions are necessary for it to do its whammy trick. Economic union, political union. They got that with their treaty and with 28 members, and that'll be whittled down to what will be recognized as only 10 members. If they reborder some of them, 2 or 3 of them, into one new region, or however they do it, it'll wind up being 10. 5 from the east, 5 from the west. That's how God prophesies it, so that's the way we're going to see it happen. So there's 2 of those 3, economic union, political union. The third thing he told us would be a military union, and that's beginning to shape because amazingly, the Allies who suffered such misery and death and killings during the World War II with Germany are now just winking at things and allowing Germany to build up army, build up big ships, and some of their ships, some of the best warships, they sell them to others in Europe. And they got a port. They've got just a little area of Germany on the ocean, a port there, but they make hay there with it. They cranking out these war-making ships even right now, and that's going to be the power God uses to punish the United States, with the greatest punishment being that which he spoke through the prophet Ezekiel. I've hit on this with you a number of times. I want you to be sure, friends, who watch here, you get this and keep you on your knees, hopefully, with something like this, where God spoke through Ezekiel that if the nation continues to disobey, all of your cities will be laid waste. Now, that's talking about a nuclear devastation such as could only be done by very powerful nuclear weapons, such as we've only had since 1955. Never in the world before 1955, when the hydrogen bomb was developed, which the atom bomb is only the trigger for a massive hydrogen bomb, and now we've got mega hydrogen bombs, and put on missiles fired into the United States, which you read the stories and the analysis, and you see the United States has not developed. We've helped Israel with that Iron Dome, and yet we in the United States don't have a defense system of that caliber for the country. We're letting our borders go where foreigners can just come in along with IIS camps, and this country is ripe for being punished, and that because of our own sins of not obeying our Creator, who in one major thing tells us that marriage, as God designed it, is between a man and a woman. And man does not have the prerogative to change that, no matter how lofty and high-minded man is, and I'm a judge of a big federal court, I can do whatever I please. Oh yeah, and God can cause Assyria to drop the bombs on all the cities of this country that will lay them waste. Read Ezekiel 6, verse 6. That's not me making this up. This is something right in your own Bible, and that is God's Word. And if you don't believe in God, well, I wish you a good night's sleep on the night that all the cities are laid waste, because you may not wake up. And if you do wake up, the nightmares you're going to find during the day when you try to ravage around the rumble and the nuclear fallout. And then Assyria will come in and take captive those who are left alive. And many will die just from pure starvation during all that. Famine is always associated with war. It's also caused by agricultural things. And that's one of God's promises for blessing and cursings. He says, if you obey me, rain in due season, meaning no droughts and no flooding. But you don't obey, just the opposite. You won't have your rain in due season, and you'll have drought, or you'll have too much rain out of season that causes flooding, either one of which kills your fruit trees and your vegetation. Eyewitnesses and helicopters have caught dramatic footage of Japan's Mount I heard the guy pronounce that, Ontake, erupting. And we've got video footage from today's news from that. The volcano, about 200 kilometers, 125 miles west of Tokyo, erupted at about noon on Saturday, spewing ash and rocks. On Sunday, rescuers reported finding 30 hikers unresponsive and feared dead near the volcano's peak. And here's a look at some of that smoke and ashes from that volcano that again erupted on Saturday. See, spewing quite a bit of ash and rocks. All right, friends, we'll come on out of that and go to one of our last stories for tonight. We got a couple more here. Last night we reported to you how Saudi Arabia has appointed some new heirs, and they're fighting. They're no longer depending on the United States. They're doing their fighting themselves. And since March, they've had a coalition bombing and fighting in the Yemen crisis. And now, in today's news, Saudi Arabia has stopped the Houthi border attack. As I get this video ready, let me just tell you a little bit more about this. Actually, I think I don't think we have video. I've just got photos with this one. And what happened today, friends, Houthi rebels launched an assault on border post in Saudi Arabia. Saudi troops have repelled a major attack on their border by Houthi rebels from Yemen, according to Saudi state media. Airstrikes carried out by a Saudi-led coalition have targeted the Shia Muslim rebels since late March. But this is the first major assault on Saudi territory since the strikes began. The Saudi reports say dozens of rebels were killed. As fighting continues, aid groups say a lack of fuel is a severely hampering factor for their operations in Yemen. And then the photo with this part of the story shows a map of Saudi Arabia and Yemen. A statement, friends, by the Saudi press agency SPA said the attack happened on the southern border. Let's bring it back out. Happened on the southern border near the Saudi town of Najran on Thursday, today, identifying the attackers as Houthi rebels and groups allied to them, SPA said. Saudi ground exchanged fire with them and called in airstrikes. The rebels, who control much of northern Yemen, including the capital Sana'a, have been fighting forces linked to the government for several months. Saudi Arabia and other Arab states have been carrying out airstrikes, again, since late March, with the declared aim of restoring exiled President Houthi. Now, earlier today, friends, a Saudi border guard was killed by a mortar shell close to the border with the Yemen in the southwest Saudi province of Jazan. Today's attacks brought the Saudi death toll from the last 5 weeks to 14. 2 weeks ago, the United Nations said 551 civilians had been killed in the conflict, about half the estimated death toll at the time. And then the caption with this photograph, friends, reads, more than 300,000 people have been forced to flee their homes in Yemen. And the caption with this photograph, part of this news story, reads, the UN estimates half the country is suffering from food shortages. And you know, friends, that relates, let's just pull our chart up real quickly and mention the third seal, the black, which is depicted as a black horse in Revelation 6, which Jesus Christ described in the Gospels, Matthew, Mark, and Luke, Matthew 24, Mark 13, Luke 21, as famine. And on Thursday, today, the UN's food program, WFP, said it had been forced to withdraw from the western province after running out of fuel there, and that it may have to pull out of other areas soon. The warning was echoed by the International Committee for the Red Cross that said a lack of fuel, as well as restrictions on imports, meant hospitals were struggling to provide an adequate level of care. The WFP, the food program, has called on all parties involved in the fighting to allow fuel and food to be imported. The country's director, WFP's country director in Yemen, said this is a country where half the population are considered food insecure, meaning that many families don't know where their next meal will come from. Friends, that should give us something we can put our heart into, a little prayer tonight. You know, we've got food on our table, but let's just imagine that you don't. Let's say that you follow the biblical instruction that my disciples, once I'm gone, they will fast often. Let's just suppose during you do a fast, and you say, well, what if I didn't have food in that cabinet at the end of my fast, and I don't know where my next meal is coming from, and I'm awfully hungry? If you can put the shoe on the other foot, if you could try to think in those terms as you pray tonight before God and ask for thy kingdom to come, and to pray for these people that are without food with some care and concern, and God will hear it. And if you do that, as he promises in Luke 21:36, if you watch and pray always, there's a promise he holds out, a carrot he holds out for you, a piece of food, a carrot, which is considered a reward for a donkey or a horse. He holds out that carrot and says, if you do that, if you watch and you pray, watch your conduct, watch this world news, pray about the things you see in the world news and people suffering and asking God to bring your kingdom, then the carrot he holds out, the promise he holds out for you is so that you may be accounted worthy to escape all these things to come. And the things to come, the first four seals is what he was had been describing, and he says this and says that you may escape what's all these things to come. And the next thing to come, the next major event in prophecy, is the fifth seal, the Great Tribulation. That's going to be a time, let's pull it out. I've been showing this the last few nights. I didn't mean to go there, friends. Let me come back out here. I meant to go over to the wall, just over my shoulder. Somebody help me get this shot. Here we go. Okay. All right, I didn't mean to go into Justinian. Let me just pop. I know where it is. Let me just pop down to it. Nope. Sorry, I'm having a hard time with my camera shots tonight. Let's see. Here it is. Okay, now we got it. The Great Tribulation. This slide depicts some of the major activities to anticipate, to expect, that are prophesied to occur during the fifth seal, during the Great Tribulation. It'll be the time of round 3 of World War. It'll be the time of the greatest martyrdom of God's saints. If you look up on the left side, top left side, martyrdom of God's saints. It'll be the time, again, of World War III. It'll be the time of 2 witnesses testifying around the world. It'll be the time that crown in the middle is placed on the head of the 7th and final dictator, emperor for the Holy Roman Empire, a leader the Bible calls the Beast. And it'll be placed on his head by the false prophet, the leader of the Roman Catholic Church, the Vatican, the Pope. And it'll be the time when the Philadelphia era of God's church, those people who are doing what Christ said do in Luke 21, verse 36, watch and pray always so that you may be accounted worthy to escape. And that's the thing I want to end this mention on and encourage you about is be praying for these people, and God promises you a wonderful reward. You do not want to be left behind during the Great Tribulation. That's the real meaning of left behind, is being left behind in that tribulation, which Jesus Christ called the worst time of trouble since the beginning of the world. It's the time of Jacob's trouble, meaning Jacob, the modern-day descendants, the 12 tribes, where they are around the world. Let's take a quick look at a slide that shows you where all the tribes of Israel were predicted in Genesis 49, as Jacob spoke to his 12 sons about where they would be, where their descendants would be in the last days. Well, these are the last days. He was prophesying ahead to our day where their descendants, which were to be numberless as the stars of heaven and as a multitude as great as the sand of the sea for number that just can't be numbered. And the sons of Joseph, Ephraim and Manasseh, which carry the name of Joseph, the UK and the United States, primarily God is concerned with because through Joseph, the blessings to the entire world were prophesied to come. And if we sin and we're worthy of punishment, then the rest of the world suffers as a result of that. Well, to finish the story I was reading to you about the food and the food problem there, the story closes by saying, it is essential that we continue to reach these families with food. And that's a quote from the WFP, the World Food Program. Friends, for our last story tonight relates to the United States and a situation with our stock market in the United States. And if I could do something, let me see if I can do this while I've got that nightcast slide up. This is our last story. I know I'm going a little long tonight, but I hope this will be something that you can take outside to your knees tonight. Public radio reports. In fact, I was able to secure the last interview that Don Ho gave before he died over in Hawaii. My dad and I went over there, and his publicist helped set us up for that interview. And that was quite a wonderful interview. Don Ho told us some things about how happy the Hawaiian people were to become a part of the United States. Some of his comments in our program some night. All right. I got the music that Marketplace uses. Like I say, I used to do stuff for public radio. So as I read you this story, they would play stormy weather whenever the stock market, all the stock markets were, down. I don't know that they're all down today, but here in this story, this report, let me bring this photograph forward and read you the caption with this one. Wall Street closed sharply lower today as weak results from several companies hit investor sentiment. The technology-heavy NASDAQ index ended the day down 1.6% or 82 points at 4,941.42 points. After the close of trading, the business social network site LinkedIn reported a 35% rise in quarterly revenues to $637.7 million. However, its shares fell sharply after hours trading as analysts were disappointed by its sales forecast. Harman International, which makes audio systems for cars, slipped 7% after posting worse than expected revenue forecast for 2015. Online listings company Yelp sank more than 23% after reports reporting slowing growth for the second consecutive quarter. Now, after all that bad news, friends, we can anticipate economically, eventually the United States is going to bottom out and go down for all the sins that the people are creating and all the laws they are passing that are an affront to the great Creator who instituted marriage to be between a man and a woman, and anything else is not marriage. It's just an excuse for a perverse queer relationship between two perverts, whether they be man and man or woman and woman. So there's not a gender discrepancy, or not discrepancy. I'm not one side or the other. It's either one, whether you're man with man or woman with woman. It's a perverse act. It's sodomy. It's worthy of fire and brimstone, which God brought down upon Sodom and Gomorrah, turned a lot of things into salt. And some of you that are carefree and say, we're just having fun. Well, yeah, you just have fun when God turns you into a big hunk of salt, burns you with fire and brimstone. Some of that from the cities being laid waste, as God says through Ezekiel and Ezekiel 6:6. On the upside, now that stormy weather is finished playing there, friends, we'll say shares in Glue Mobile, best known for creating the popular Kim Kardashian Hollywood game, soared almost 25% after China's Tencent said it would buy a 14.6% stake in the company for $126 million. That's another problem, though. Here you got Japan buying these American companies, or not Japan, I'm going to say China, buying these American companies, foreigners owning our country. The deal with one of China's biggest online gaming companies would help Glue expand in that market, the company said. The Kardashian game has generated revenue of almost $100 million since its release in only June 2014, June of last year. And Glue now plans one based on Britney Spears. All right, friends, with that, we'll end this Thursday night report. We're off until Sunday. We're not on Friday night and Saturday night. I am on a different channel on the weekend, on Saturday, for those of you who know about that. We call it the Sabbath, on the Sabbath.tv channel. But for those who are here for the day's current news for Nightcast, again, that's it till Sunday night. God willing, and the creek don't rise, we'll be back then. Thanks for joining me tonight, friends. Until next time, this is your host for Nightcast, Stephen Lloyd Gilbreth, saying so long and good night, friends.
You have been watching Nightcast with Stephen Lloyd Gilbreth. Nightcast can be seen Sunday through Thursday nights here on COGTV.org. Tonight's program is also available anytime on demand in the COGTV.org video archive.